What up, dudes? I know I haven't done one of these in a while, but really good opportunity to do so because I am currently in my season and I am actually in the process of making a mechanical adjustment. If you guys have been following me for a while and you're familiar with me, you know that I'm a big trial and error guy. And even over the course of the off season before this season started, I experimented with some three-quarter arm slot. I called it drop down Rob experiment. Anyways, didn't really love it, but the way the season is going right now, I am in the process, as I mentioned, kind of changing this. But before we really dive into this breakdown, we're going to be looking at deGrom from the straight behind. He did a rehab assignment, and they actually captured some good video. And then me, this is my first pen with the new arm angle a few days ago. So we're currently on our all-star break here this season and have 2 more days until we actually have to play a game. So it was a really good opportunity for me to do this adjustment. But before we get going, shout out to OnForm. OnForm is the application that I use for all my breakdowns. So be sure to check them out. You can download them on the App Store. Really cool software, as you can see. Allows me to do these breakdowns and draw and write and all this stuff. So it's really cool. So shout out to them. Anyways, all right. So there's a few things that we're going to see. All right. Like I have these 2 videos, my video shot in maybe a higher frame rate than the one deGrom is in, but I have them synced up at ball release. So we're just going to play this through first time. All right. So there's a few things. I mean, deGrom is somebody that is very, 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 very efficient with his movements. I've done a ton of breakdowns on him. I just want to look at a few things. Like you're going to see some of these things similar. You're going to see some of these things not. And it's interesting to look at pitching mechanics as a whole and see how these little tiny pieces to someone's delivery can make a mile per hour harder there or a mile per hour harder there. So we'll just see these. So got them here. Both videos are at peak leg lift. All right. So they're synced up at ball release, but they're also synced up at peak leg lift, which is cool. Now, as we're going to descend, right, the descending move is the loading of the drive leg. This is a pretty good indication of seeing somebody's direction, right? So even though deGrom is much better with the loading phase of his drive leg, you're going to see my direction kind of get compensated early on from this load. The way that I load is in my quad. I just want to go that way. You're going to see deGrom go that way a little bit as well, but not as drastic as me. So you're going to see that move here. Let's go to this one. All right. So you see my weight kind of goes that way, whereas deGrom's weight, it shades a little bit that way. But ideally, his right butt cheek is going in line with where he's expressing his energy, whereas mine is kind of just falling, collapsing, if you will. All right. Now, another piece that I admire about deGrom is the separation of the hands. Okay. So separation of the hands, you're going to see as he separates his hands, his glove side. Okay. So his glove arm is going to go out like that. Now, the reason why I'm jealous of this move is because this is something of a move that helps aid in the loading of his drive leg and the direction of his hip hinge. All right. So if we counterbalance ourselves with our glove side or even our lead leg, right? As you can see, I'm trying to attempt to counterbalance my weight distribution to avoid getting too misdirected with my lead leg. All right. So his glove arm going out like this, and you can see the way that his shoulders are lined up, kind of counter-rotating over his rear hip. This is an elite move to essentially get the most out of that loading of the drive leg. Whereas you see myself here, I'm not necessarily using my glove side as a means to counterbalance my weight distribution. You can see that my shoulders are kind of neutral, trunk is neutral, and everything else aside from that looks somewhat similar. All right. But you can just see the way that his posture of his trunk is versus mine. That is a component that kind of influences why he can load better than me. There's a lot of things he does better than me, so save it. All right. Now, we can see that move again here. So again, this is where it gets different this is where it gets tricky because like I eventually get to this glove side kind of extended going out to means as a counterbalance, but actually like you can kind of see in these few frames, like me extending my glove side actually kind of pulls me out of my glute even more so, right? And you can kind of make the argument that that's actually just a byproduct anyways, it was going to happen. So now as I get pulled even more with my glove side, you can see my weight still going this way. Whereas you can see deGrom, like gosh, this is so freaking ridiculous. So like he is linear, right? And his trunk is actually, as he descends more down the slope, like his trunk is is counter rotating more. And then the glove side down. So you can already see from the picture, like he's going to create so much freaking rotational energy. Whereas I talked about this with Dr. Heenan the other day with like my cervical rotation, right? So you see a lot of guys like have struggles with, their cervical rotation. There's a restriction going left side. And so what that restriction does is actually forces somebody to early rotate their trunk to kind of see, and deGrom's better at that than me, obviously. All right, so now peep this. All right, so this is where I probably lose the most velocity. All right, so my trunk is neutral. Like if we just looked at me at anchor point, right, like I do a good job of segmenting my rotations. Like I talk about that a lot, how like you want the lower half to rotate first, right, and then the upper half stays neutral. That's how you create stretch. But the amount of rotational energy, right? Like look at this picture of deGrom here. So staying counter rotated over the rear hip, and now as the hips initiate rotation, his elbow is way back here, right? So the amount of stretch he's creating, not just from like the hip shoulders, but the pec as well, like the chest pec stretch that I've done a few things on, is remarkable, right? And that's like where I would say the biggest difference in it is in terms of power output between these two. And again, maybe there's a little bit of video work here that might be making an illusion. I wouldn't put too much emphasis in that. I just know that I shot mine from kind of like a higher up angle where this is straight behind. I don't think that would affect the positioning of these guys all too much, but I just want to say that. Okay, so now like I do a decent job of like the timing and everything. I just think I'm leaving so much on the table. As you can see, there's this movement here as my glove side goes out that I kind of pull away, right? Like I start to like kind of fall into front foot strike. Whereas deGrom, like he's pulling with his chest, his arm through, and he's still maintaining this load, right? Like if we can turn it to this camera now, and kind of show this example, right? So it's like the counter rotation of his trunk, the glove side counterbalance, allowing him to load in his hip. All of these movements are like holding on. It's kind of like this resisting or this delaying mechanism of this rotational energy he's generating and creating, right? So he's going, and now as he continues to progress into his drive phase, it's not that he pulls, I got to use better verbiage here. It's not that he just falls and then starts to initiate his arm swing, right? Like it's up until that very last second where now it's like, all right, boom, we've created all of this stretch from our pecs, our chest, our separation, and all this goodness that we have, and now it's time to snap and pull, right? Whereas for me, it's like, all right, glove side extends and hands ready. All right, now I'm like just coasting and falling, and now my arm needs to make up for all that energy that I lost, right? And I think, to be completely honest, this is really good for me. This is like therapeutic. I'm talking all this out. To be honest, I think this is all, to me, just a byproduct of my inability to truly, like, authentically, freaking effectively, all these words that end in ly, load my drive leg, load my rear hip, which could be then like a byproduct of, all right, let's fix our hand separation placement. Let's fix our mechanism or our movement as we do separate our hands to get my glove side a little bit more involved to then influence my trunk wanting to kind of counter rotate over that. And I'm looking forward to it. Like, this is the first time all season that I've actually been able to like kind of break down video of myself to really like see, frick, dude, that's jacked up. All right, so now looking at this picture again, like hopefully you can really see this on the iPad of just, I mean, shoot, not even just the retraction or the scap load, right, difference, if you will, but like even the rear hip, right, and the pelvis positioning. Kind of somewhat similar, I suppose. I was struggling with his pants, my shorts. And now as we go through, look how like my head gets kind of antsy and wants to go out, whereas his kind of just stays quiet and lets it all be just a byproduct. And then just look at the way he goes linear, like the releasing of all this energy. Like, yes, it's one thing to be elite with your generation of like your energy throughout, you know, the early stages of your delivery. And it's another thing to be elite when it comes to like the expense or the dispense, what's that word? Whatever, of your energy, right? The expenditure of your energy. So not only on time, but in line. Holy smokes. So like, whereas me, like my direction was kind of compensated from the beginning. So even after ball release, like my energy, my direction wants to kind of go that way. It's kind of like this seesaw. And whereas deGrom, like he created so much rotational energy and then freaking released it in the direction of where his target is, which is the catcher. And you can see that there. So as he separates his hands, like he's got a little bit longer swing of his hand, right? Like we always make fun of me on TikTok for short arming. I don't really look at that. Like, but the timing of that is going to influence like the path it needs to take. So with him dropping, going down with his hands and me just kind of going out into my retraction, that's actually something that I might need to kind of check the ego at the door and like look into that to see like, all right, well, do I need to get a little bit more elbow extension as I separate my hands to maybe influence my glove hand to drop more, which will then kind of influence this glove side to kind of shoot down as you see here. Not saying that that's like an elite move or whatever, but I think that is something that takes that lead shoulder and kind of counter rotates his trunk. Whereas me, I'm going separation into retraction essentially, but that separation is causing my direction going this way. And again, just another thing that's affecting my inability to get the most out of my load, right? Gosh, look at that. So, and that's one thing that like, even when I did these experiments, you know, in the off season, when it comes to like the drop down thing or the 3/4 rob or whatever you want to call it, the one thing that I did like was the feelings of creating like stretch, creating rotational energy and using the glove side to kind of aid in doing that. Whereas when I'm over the top, like I just feel so much more, you know, like forward. Like I don't feel much like rotational. I feel just, all right, load, and then now take all of this over and pull down. Whereas 3/4 sidearm, it's so much more like generation of this rotational piece to it. But all right, even though we're super rotational, like can we still have direction going towards our target, which is a hard move. All right, that's all I got. So that was good. I was going to do this with no camera, and I'm glad I did it with the camera because I think, you know, you guys can take something out of it. For me, I'm taking out, like I'm going to play around even today with some just kind of like dry reps or plyo balls, you know, this glove side. And again, it's not something that I'm like looking at deGrom and being like, all right, I got to do every single thing like him. Like, but guys like this are a good place to start when you get like the body type, you get the movements and all that, and just see like, all right, well, what mechanisms do they kind of put into place in their delivery to help them influence like these major components, like the drive leg loading, the segmentation, separation, rotational energy, forward acceleration, drive leg, you know, all these things. So it's cool. Like, it's kind of tough for me because I don't know, like I don't want to say that the path that the hand has so much to do with it, but it does kind of, for me, as I'm sitting here looking at this, it does, I think, affect the my ability to maintain like my scap load. So like I get good retraction and horizontal shoulder abduction, but I mean, all of it's essentially worthless if we don't maintain that until the point in which we truly anchor down. Like as you see, like I'm pulling kind of early. And I mentioned earlier the word seesaw, like, all right, so I'm up and now I'm going this way, and then every action is a reaction. So then I'm going to pull this way. And then as soon as I pull that way, I'm going to go back to where my original direction was that way. Whereas him, it's like everything is just efficiently generated and expressed. I think that was the word that I was looking for earlier. All right, shout out OnForm. Check them out, App Store, Google Play. I don't know if that's right, but it sounds right. And follow along my journey. Second half starts soon. Check out my mic'd up start breakdowns on my YouTube. And shout out Old Hick for this shirt and the hat. Much love, guys. God bless. Till next time. We'll see you later.